From my perspective, looking at the market over the last couple of weeks is like everyone's focused on the short-term pain. There's way more people actually buying Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. It's more just the sentiment around these things like, oh, they're selling off. That means Bitcoin's going to zero. That's not the case.
The controversy around like the SEC investigating into Ethereum dropping, we've instantly seen a lot of like items within the ETH ecosystem just absolutely rally.
The big thing to call out here is the ETH ETF. Like that's going to be the biggest narrative of this month of July. A lot of people are speculating on how it's going to impact the price of ETH. G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping into Crypto. My name's Ted and I'm joined by Pav Hundal. Pav, how you doing today, my good friend?
Good, dude.
Good? Mate, it's been a hell of a week. Not the greatest of weeks in the crypto market, but I know you've had a big smile on your face this morning, so that's what I like to see. But first of all, how you been?
Good. Oh, yeah, good.
Okay.
Well, reasons not to me, but let's not talk about them.
Yeah, okay.
Just no sleep. That's fine.
No sleep. That's all right. Yeah. 3 kids will do that to you.
Yeah, not their fault, but...
Mate, let's get straight into it because we've got a lot to unpack. We've got things to unpack from selling off from the German government, Mt. Gox, but then you've got some really positive news on what you think the market will do over the next coming months. A new hamster game that we're looking at.
Yeah,
so,
geez, that's been consuming us.
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit.
I think that's why I'm tired. No.
Yeah. And then also how the ETH impact could... Sorry, the ETF could impact the price of ETH moving forward. So
yeah, there's a lot happening.
Heaps to unpack. So let's dive straight into it. Pav, what are your current thoughts on the market? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, it's pretty good what we're seeing right now in terms of the technicals. We've deviated outside this range low from April, May. For those people listening, we do have a recording of this on YouTube. So come check it out if you want to see what we're talking about whenever we talk about charts. But for me, we're at a pretty critical point, bulls versus bears. It's just a battleground. But lower time frames seem to show accumulation from the way I sort of measure and see things. But I think the real test for the fate of the markets will be if from here we can put in a structurally higher high, which means a rally from here past 63 towards 65K. I think that's what it's going to take to start to build the next uptrend. And even if we get there, it might take a few weeks until we actually start to trend. That's just what I would want to see as a sign of strength. But alternatively, I could even see a point where we go down to 53K over the next 1 to 2 weeks. And even that I don't see as a bad thing. I think that'll be potentially one of the last liquidity grabs before we start to push again higher. Pretty similar to what we've seen in previous periods when we have been consolidating all of last year. So all in all, I think it's looking good. And I guess the reason why I'm probably a bit more positive is just the cracks I think are starting to show for the policymakers. And, you know, we've talked about crypto markets in the past. It's all about liquidity. We need money in the system. Part of that is interest rates. And everyone's been hoping and praying for rate drops since the end of last year, really. And I think it's been a bit of a shock to the system for a lot of people towards the middle of, you know, the first half of this year, Q1 into Q2, where there were promises of rate drops but no delivery. There was always the same rhetoric on jobs are looking good and inflation was too high. Well, for the last few months, we've seen inflation kind of stay steady. But we actually saw last week, Friday, the jobs market start to slide a little bit too. Pretty concerning. But I think the big one this week will be there is some testimonies being done by Fed Chair Jerome Powell with the Banking Senate Committee, where if they do quiz him and drill him about, well, how can you possibly say that the rates are where they should be when jobs are falling off a cliff, I think he's going to have to come up with some pretty captivating answers. But I think everyone will be waiting for, if you're watching that and boring like me, for him to sort of give some sort of hand of where things could be going. But if we look at this chart, even that I'm showing right now, this is available on the CME Group website. It's called the FedWatch tool. Basically aggregates the probabilities that the market is putting towards rate drops at these particular meetings throughout the year. And the September meeting's been one of interest for me. If you follow the green squiggly line, that's basically the market putting its probabilities of rate drops occurring in September. And this has taken a marked increase since that announcement that I just mentioned at the end of last week. And the percentage chance that the market sees for rates staying the same has absolutely plummeted. So this was basically in no man's land, sitting around people. There's basically people sitting on the fence for months and months and months, and it's only in recent times it's really started to turn. So I think it's still a bit early to know 100% what's happening, but we're seeing the stock market continue to put in new fresh highs. Crypto market's definitely at a point of apathy, and like you sort of said, we have seen powers outside of anyone's control, like the German government, for example. This is a dashboard that you can make on the Arkham Intelligence website, an on-chain data visualizer. But it shows just their movements on chain for a wallet that's been linked to that entity. So it's gone from 50,000 Bitcoin to just successive selling through exchanges, where it now sits at 40,000 Bitcoin. And they're basically a fifth of the way through potentially selling down their whole stack. Or maybe they're going to keep some. We don't really know.
Well, that's been the narrative this week, right? Or this past week has been the Mt. Gox selling off, which I don't think has even started yet, but in anticipation of that. So a bit of sell pressure there. And then also German government basically having seized Bitcoin and then sending it to exchanges to sell off to basically cash in or cover themselves. Doesn't look like they're going to sell it all off. They might hold on to some because they think it could be going up. That's purely speculation on my end, but that's sort of driving this recent pullback.
It's a lot of spot entering the market, but again, it is a drop in the ocean when you think about 35 bill is traded on any given day for Bitcoin, even when it's quiet. But it still affects sentiment. Most people out there, they're seeing this, they don't know what to make of it, so they're just selling as a protective measure potentially. But look, it's taken this much news to get Bitcoin to where it is today. But if we measure from the highs, it's still down like 27, 25, 26%. So pretty much in the ballpark of what we've seen in prior retracements. And for me, I'm just liking what I'm seeing at these range lows. I think if we can continue just to consolidate here, even technically speaking, should offer hopefully some relief rallies across the board. So I'm excited. And I know you've been following some macro too these days, Ted.
Mate, well, sometimes when you're off the podcast, I have to fill your shoes when it comes to the macro. So I'm starting to get into it a little bit, despite how boring it is. But look, I was looking at the M2 metric, which is basically a metric of all the money supply.
Liquid money supply.
And this is basically the percentage change month on month. And we've seen 3 months in a row of positive percentage change in the M2. Looking at this chart for those that are just listening on, wherever you get your podcasts, that's really big because we've, for the last sort of, I guess since the end of 2022, so about a year and a half, we've just seen negative month-on-month changes in this M2 supply. So the fact that we're seeing positive growth in that realm is massive. And like you see that massive spike in 2020 when they just injected liquidity into the market around the COVID sort of time. So, and that's when crypto markets went crazy, right? So we've always talked about liquidity is what is required now to send markets to the next level, because people need, additional funds to be able to put into risk on assets, as we call crypto, and also tech stocks and things like that. So it's not these huge spikes that we're seeing now as compared to 2020, but it's still positive as it is, positive month-on-month growth.
Yeah, this is huge. Following this, I think, is a very just basic way of understanding what's happening in the world. And we're seeing now a phase where we've stopped pulling money out and putting money back in, I guess. And that's just the way the world goes.
That's it. And from my perspective, looking at the market over the last couple of weeks is like everyone's focused on the short-term pain. Like there's so much about the narrative of Mt. Gox and also the German government selling off a fifth of their Bitcoin. But like you said, there's way more people actually buying Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. It's more just the sentiment around these things. Like, they're selling off, that means Bitcoin's going to zero. That's not the case. I like to take the longer term approach of looking at all the things that are happening, sort of in the next 6 to 12 months, and also the things that have happened, previously. Like we've seen with the Bitcoin ETF getting approved, that was huge for the market. We saw new all-time highs. We're now going to see the ETH ETF likely get approved and start trading sometime in July.
Correct.
It's an election year. We always talk about election years.
The back end of the year.
Yeah, back end of the year, often resulting in more liquidity and being injected into the market, and markets performing quite well across the board. And then also, like, we're seeing a political shift in crypto, mainly in the US, because that is the main market we look at, because it's, it's sort of the center of all things that we focus on. And Trump's had a shift and basically has come out and said he's the crypto president in more words or less. And then Biden's also, kind of shifted his stance on it to be a little bit more crypto positive. So all in all, I think these things will outweigh these short-term gain, short-term pain. But it just takes time,
And just with the short-term pain point, like even when we go back to basics and we look at, well, people that we want to see buying Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin ETFs, like those entities, they've since Friday, even when we're having those massive sell-offs, we've seen positive net flows.
Yep.
So that's huge. So I think, again, the wind isn't blowing in the right direction for me. I think we could still go lower, absolutely, but I think the majority of the selling, unless something completely out of the blue comes through and whacks everything down, I think we have seen it, personally speaking. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look at some top movers. I mean, this won't be a surprise. Everything's going to be red. Hey, there you go.
I see a red, and there's not really anything to take from this. Like, everything's down sort of 20% on average.
Yep.
Only a speckle of green in there with Notcoin, largely off the back of that hamster game that we'll talk about later in the show. Yep. And then OM, which is an interesting one. We've touched on them a little bit because they've been sort of pivoting into that RWA, reward assets sector. Yep. So they're doing some big things, and they've been in the top movers a few weeks in a row, or at least a handful of times in the last month.
Yep.
But that's all I've really got to take out of this, Pav.
Yeah, well, Celestia's there. I mean, that one's just been a perpetual downward trend for so long. It's pulled right back to almost where it started.
Yep.
But showing some pretty good strength out of the gates. I think also right now, if people are sort of sitting there thinking about, well, what do I do with this information right now? Like the idea that, might be a good time to look at building up your portfolios again, looking to dollar cost average in, looking at top weekly performers when the market is down and just starting to recover. This is where you can really start to see what's got the strongest conviction out there in the market. So, if the market's looking at, well, the whole market's down, you want to understand what are the majority buying. This is the perfect time to do that. So I think the way I've shown this in the past is you can head to any aggregator like CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap. You can set your value of everything out of US dollars into Bitcoin, because obviously you want to know what's performing against Bitcoin, and then just sort it by the last 7 days. And lo and behold, we can see that those ones we just talked about, no surprise, but they're leading the way. So I'd be continuing to watch them. And obviously on a 24-hour chart too, you can sort of see Ethereum name services on there, Bonk, Pepe. So we're still seeing a theme that meme coins are still being bought up at the highest rate, I guess, and infrastructure tokens again. So we haven't really shifted narrative at all yet. It's all infrastructure, memes, and a little bit of AI. I can see BitTensor here. Bit of gaming with Beam, but Beam has been a bit of a leading asset across the board whenever we do see the market start to push. So no, that is good to see again. But I'm seeing the same themes I've seen for the last, I think it's been like going on 6 to 10 months right now. So
And just to touch on meme coins, like we often get the question, like, how do you find meme coins? How do you know which ones are going to do well? As part of Swyftx, you and I both work on content together. We'll be bringing out a report later this week that touches on sort of meme coins, what the communities behind them, and how to find any sort of underlying value in them. I know it's a lot of these are just based on pure hype, but
some of them have tech, but
Exactly. And that's what we're going to touch on. And we might even break that down a little bit more detail next week once it's out in public. So get keen for that one.
Very good.
The big thing to call out here is the ETH ETF. Like, that's going to be the biggest narrative of this month of July. And a lot of people are speculating on how it's going to impact the price of ETH. We saw when the Bitcoin ETF initially launched, we saw a bit of a drawback because a lot of people were selling the grayscale product. There's a lot of speculation that's going to happen again. Like JP Morgan, one of the big banks in the US, is forecasting a $1 billion exits of the ETH grayscale product. And so that could contribute to overall net outflows of Ethereum ETFs and impact the ETH price in a negative way. But look, I came across this tweet where they've kind of broken down and compared how the Bitcoin ETF performed and comparing that to how ETH could be impacted. So a lot of people or analysts are speculating that ETH will have about $2 to $5 billion in inflows in the first 6 months of trading. So that's what we're going off. And that's going to be about 15% of the Bitcoin inflows. Based on this, how the Bitcoin price was impacted by those inflows, they're expecting 15% of inflows. That's like sort of a bear case in what they're saying here. Will increase the price of ETH by 13%. And in more of the bullish case, that $5 billion in inflows, we're going to see a 30% increase in the price of ETH. And that's from today's prices. So things change. But look, that's just some maths that I've found on Twitter. And I thought it was a good breakdown of how things could play out.
I like it.
Obviously, nothing plays out the way people predict, but I think this is a good little...
It sets up your expectations.
Exactly.
Because you can go in week one, see the flows, and then understand what impact it could have on price.
That's it. And then I stumbled across another tweet from this Nate Garaki, I think his name is, who I hadn't heard of before, but I did a bit of background research into him, and he is a bit of an ETF specialist, so he's not really in the crypto world at all. So he's made a big call here and said, early and easy, in my opinion, prediction, spot ETH ETFs will be the second most successful debut in history, only behind spot Bitcoin ETFs, which is a pretty major call out. And that's, based on 30 years of ETF launches, and he's saying ETH is going to be the second most successful launch ever. Of course, we know that Bitcoin was its most successful launch. So what do we get from that? There's a lot of appetite for crypto.
Yep. It's exciting, isn't it?
What do you think? Do you think there's going to be a bit of an ETH narrative that plays out on the back of this with ecosystem assets?
I think for sure. Like they had the controversy around like the SEC investigating into Ethereum dropping. We've instantly seen a lot of items within the ETH ecosystem just absolutely rally. So like MakerDAO, ENS, we've seen LidoDAO, Aave, all these DeFi sort of utility infrastructure. Baseline. This is how this whole network runs, just completely. Obviously people are speculating that they're going to be a very major part of its future, and there'll be a lot of money tied into the Ethereum ecosystem. So I'm very excited. I think there's been a lot of focus on the Solana ecosystem. It's still to this date still outperforming, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a overwhelming just move back into the Ethereum ecosystem. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on it, but I still can't go away from the fact that the Solana space has been performing so well. So it just might be a bit more competition than what it has been in the last couple of months.
Can we speculate on what particular, Ethereum assets might be an Ethereum alpha if we see a sort of a narrative play out there?
Yeah, like for me, I was going to, as part of the segment, just share some charts specifically on what I'm watching. And this is a great example because it's how I'm building one of my tips for this week, which is ENS, so Ethereum Name Service. So, Vitalik's even talked about Ethereum Name Service being a pivotal role in the mass adoption of blockchain technology, shortening those big, long addresses into short URLs, that sort of thing. So, I think this has been a major top performer even in recent time. But, I'm watching this particular chart to flip this mid-region and hopefully watch it continue to the most recent highs of 34.50 and then start to price higher at 38.53 as like my next targets. And if we don't see this start to rally and we see it sort of tumble and stumble because Bitcoin takes a bit of a breather and the whole market just has a bit of an exhale again, I wouldn't be surprised to see this one fall back again, back a little bit lower, so back towards about $23. So
the bull case here, we're looking at what, like a 30% increase to that 38 mark?
Yeah, if we make it to the next Fibonacci target, 40% increase.
40%, okay.
Yep. And then obviously the downside risk is, it's a bit hard to say. I mean, you could say that we could see new lows, which is about 26% down. So another big call out with these smaller altcoins as well. Bitcoin might move 3, 4, 5%, but these guys, they tend to move 20% in the same move. So that's one that I'm currently watching as well. And then also on the flip side, Bonk has been a top performer in the Solana space, and even in the most recent time, it has actually flipped this mid-region that I was talking about Ethereum Name Service needing to flip. So for me, this is looking like it could go higher. So again, my invalidation is that it dips below this same mid-range that it's been holding. But from here, targeting the next levels, we've got previous highs at 11% higher. And then your first extension on using Fibonacci, which is 21 odd percent. So some good setups from my perspective and what I'm liking. So in terms of sharing and discovering some sort of alpha, I think that hopefully is helpful. But we're hoping to just, I guess, throughout the the coming weeks, we'll just keep sort of finding these sort of technical and fundamental tailwinds and share them with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see what we're seeing and share what we're thinking.
You're such an alpha, Pav.
Well, you too, mate.
Thanks.
Oh, I feel less alpha than you.
Oh, okay.
That was weird. Let's talk about hamsters now.
Absolutely. It's about time we talk about hamsters.
How good's your hamster?
I actually haven't played this game, and I know you haven't. A lot of guys around the office have started building their hamster portfolio. But for those of you that don't know, so there's this new game on Telegram called Hamster Combat, and it's absolutely exploded since it launched. It's got about 240 million users in just 80 days. and like half of them are active.
This is what we talked about too, like the power of using something that currently exists to onboard new users. Like,
that's it.
So yeah, this is on Telegram. If Ted did, I think you mentioned that already. So like already there's like people know how to use Telegram.
Well, people already have Telegram.
Correct. So to get them into the crypto space without even knowing it through something like Telegram, like it's a winner.
It makes sense. And Telegram is closely linked with the TON network, which, you know, Toncoin is an asset we list at Swyftx. I think that's even in the top 10 these days.
It is.
But look, tell us a little bit about the game. Can you explain like how it works? Does it have a coin yet?
So there's speculation that participating will earn you some sort of airdrop, and they do have a little section on their app that basically alludes to that. But it's one of these ones where what do you call them? Like click to play or something? Click to farm or something. So you basically tap on a hamster and it earns you points or dollars, and then you use that to invest. The idea is that you're a hamster CEO running a crypto exchange, and so all the upgrades are like, you know, add more pairs, spend marketing, hire a PR team, like all those sort of things, and you earn like passive coins as a result of making those investments. So it's no different. It's I can't even remember if there's any mainstream games similar. I've seen them everywhere. It's like Cookie Clicker.
Not Coin.
Not Coin as well.
Not Coin is one of those clicker games on Telegram that kicked off with like a heap of users, and I think this has even taken over it.
Okay. But that's it. It's an idle clicker. That's the word. Idle clicker. So a lot of people may be sort of half familiar with that idea anyway. But look, this isn't groundbreaking, but it just, I think for me, it's more of an adoption play to show that you can onboard 250 million users.
That's it.
In just under 80 days. And that's the people, I think that, again, like it's so unspoken of how easily people will come into the space with this sort of...
And I think from an investment perspective, the big thing to call out here is the Toncoin narrative. Like we are just seeing Toncoin go from strength to strength because of those close ties to the likes of Telegram. But you know, we're even seeing like a Toncoin type or a Solana type narrative playing out with Toncoin. And I think it could be one of the top performers of this cycle.
It's just go from strength to strength. While the whole market's been going sideways, this has been going higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So stuff. I'm going to keep a close eye on Toncoin and also anything in the Toncoin ecosystem, and we'll keep you posted on anything that's happening there. But yeah, just another win for them.
Yeah, it is. And speaking of other wins, we've got another entrant to the Solana spot ETF arena, so 21 shares. We have recently spoke about Vanek adding in their applications. So again, this just solidifies that whole idea of while everyone's going to get excited about Ethereum in the coming days, it's just going to be potential prelude for something that's been running hot already all for the last 12 months anyway. So huge one for Solana bulls out there. So yeah, really begs the question of what's next after Solana. What do you reckon?
That's tough. After Solana, it becomes a little bit more difficult because there'll be a lot of people calling for XRP and Cardano, but there's not a huge amount of narrative around those ones at the moment. So maybe a newer coin like Toncoin or Avalanche.
Might even see Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana, some sort of...
I'd like to see that.
Some sort of aggregate.
I'd really like to see that. We discussed that last week when that'll happen. So maybe sooner rather than later.
Yep. No, I like it.
Who knows? But I think, we've now seen 2 applications for Solana ETFs. I think we'll see probably
more to come.
Probably about 10 in the coming month or so. So yeah, just keep
your eyes peeled.
Keep your eyes peeled for those.
Yeah. All right, well, that's a wrap, mate. We've got the tipping comp now to come through. So last week, I was a bit skeptical thinking the market could go down, but I was willing to take a punt. So I went Bitcoin, Maker, and Lido, which were ended up on 8,349. So nice little haircut for me there. But you took the win this week, and you had...
Yeah, I don't know if I am proud to say I took the win this week because win's a win. I also went down and bled pretty heavily. But win's a win. But look, let's look forward to the next week because I'm excited about what's coming up the next week. I think there's still some, like a good chance that we could bleed a little bit more this week. But look, this TIC demo mode trading game is all about taking punts, having a bit of fun. It's not an actual investing sort of exercise. But what have you got for us this week?
For me, it's Ethereum and the 2 assets that I covered today as well. So ENS and Bonk, just because of the relative strength they've had recently. I just want to try and ride those coattails.
I like it.
But again, I wouldn't be surprised, like we talked about at the very start, if we do track down a little bit lower. could be looking at another bled out portfolio, but we'll see what happens. So it's worth having a go.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah, but basically basing all my three off what we've talked about today. So the Ethereum season with the ETF coming up, I've gone with Pepe as a bit of a beta play there.
Nice.
Memes are just seem to be outperforming the rest of the market at the moment. So Pepe is in a good position if ETH goes well. Then Toncoin on the back of Hamster Combat hype and just overall the amount of users it's been getting is great. So Toncoin, and then lastly Jupiter as a beta play for the Solana ETF hype that we discussed as well.
Yeah, that's a goodie. It's been strength to strength, held price pretty well last couple of weeks. So see how we go. All right, mate. Well, that's good. Till next week, I guess.
Until next week, Pav. See you then, and we'll see you all then. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.